Great. I think we can go ahead and get started. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. I am Anna Kate Ross, and this is an Atiba webinar on outsourcing your IT. Today, I am joined by my colleagues Lee Brewington, software developer and team lead, and also Jeff Johnson, a virtual CIO and fellow project manager. And we're going to speak with Pablo Ismael. He's the partner and COO at Atlas Search, an executive recruiting firm. The topic is outsourcing your IT, and in this case, it's outsourcing software development and also managed IT services. So Atlas is a client of Atiba's on the software side and actually works with a different company on the IT managed services side. So we'll get kind of both perspectives on that. Pablo, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Anna Kate. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, so before we get into kind of actually outsourcing your tech, tell us a little bit about Atlas Search, the company, and also the origin story, because I know you were a partner from the beginning, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We launched February of 2015. It's myself and a few others from a previous firm, and we launched with 6 people. Initially, just in a small room, basically that could fit, I think, 6 total, and now we're over 110 people, headquartered in New York City. We do recruiting both on a permanent and temporary basis across 10 different divisions.
That's awesome. So what was it that you thought would set you all apart from your previous roles? How is Atlas Search going to be different than other environments?
No, essentially, we just thought we could do it better in the way of, our previous firm was very successful. We thought, though, that we can do things differently. We can change some things and tweak some things operationally and from a technological standpoint to really kind of supercharge a recruiter's ability to fill roles for our clients.
Mm-hmm. And when back in the early days, I imagine you had kind of a startup mentality as you were just getting off the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we still have that startup mentality, but yeah, it was all hands on deck, everybody doing everything and anything, and essentially that mindset, it was what brought on the idea of outsourcing our IT and outsourcing our development. Just because to bring somebody at that capacity and in-house is just going to be just cost prohibitive. Quite honestly, when you're just trying to get by and trying to survive your first few years.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you first started, how early? So Neo is the software application that Atlas uses. That's the applicant tracking system, and that's what we at Atiba help Pablo maintain and build out now. How early on did Neo come about? I actually don't know the very early origin story of the application itself.
So when we, even before we launched, we were taking a look at different applications, and we realized quickly that nobody out there was doing everything that we wanted. So the
Oh,
idea
like
of it,
using like software as a solution, like off-the-shelf tools weren't doing
yeah,
exactly what you wanted. Got
yeah,
it.
we took a look at, a few of the big players out there, like a Bullhorn, I think Big Biller, a few others. We didn't see anything that fit kind of everything that we wanted. We ended up going with a product that kind of got us by, but since the very beginning, we knew eventually we'd land on building our own. And then I would say probably around 3 years in, we decided to start going down that route of building in. And we've been now in business for about 10 years, so a little over 10 years. So I would say probably six of the last 6 years we've been using it, and having different versions of it and adding more and more to it.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you were pretty certain from the beginning that you weren't planning to hire developers, but that must have been like to have in-house on your own. But you probably did discuss it some. Were there some pros and cons you were thinking of when you were first contemplating all this?
Yeah, from the idea of outsourcing is, we always, from like I mentioned, from a cost perspective, initially the thought of building our own software is like, it's one project, take a year or two and then we'd be done with it. So from that perspective, made a lot more sense than hiring somebody dedicated to doing something like this. We also like the idea of just scalability. If we wanted to ramp things up, we can scale things up and down relatively easily. The other thing is just intellectual capital. Bringing one person in who has one set of experiences is limited comparing to, essentially hiring a firm like yours that has a lot of developers, a lot of different clients. I'm constantly saying like, hey, this is how I see the world as a recruiter. What other solutions have you guys seen in other fields, in other industries that might actually fit better for what we're trying to achieve?
Yeah, and Lee, can you speak to that a little bit? Because he's the team lead for a number of developers here at Atiba, but also is the solution architect on Atlas Search. And I do always enjoy having those conversations with you, Pablo, about this idea or that idea, or how could we do this or that? And I know that Lee's experience on other clients has helped color some of that, but do you want to speak to that a little bit, Lee?
Sure, yeah, I think the experience is a big part of it, as he mentioned, especially with if you're a startup or if you're a small to mid-sized business, the number of resources you're going to be able to hire on the project is pretty limited. So that becomes a pretty important hire. You need someone that knows the programming, you need someone that knows the DevOps, you need someone that has experience with all those things. So that's one thing that Atiba has is, for instance, for Atlas, if they want to speed up their search and they need to bring in some kind of full text index or open search type software, they might have hired someone that doesn't have that experience. Whereas Atiba, we have two or three people that have not only know about the technology, but have had hands-on experience. So it's easy to bring that experience in and apply that to the application in real time. So, and we've seen that in Neo system as a real world example of that happening. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from a cost perspective, Pablo, how do you all think about in terms of, paying for like a monthly fee for outside developers to come in versus having someone on staff?
There's obviously plus and minuses to both. From a cost perspective, the way we look at it is like, yeah, we can bring somebody in-house, but their capacity is going to be limited. How much they can do, and so we like the ability to kind of ramp things up. We just discussed recently, like, hey, we might be adding this other project in. Do we do it simultaneously with everything that's going on now, or do we just kind of wait, till we take care of some of these open items? So, from that perspective, it also the other component of it from a cost perspective is we don't have to worry about having a seat dedicated to somebody, the technology behind them, benefits, onboarding, hiring. A big concern is like, what if we do have somebody that's kind of like a master of all these things, et cetera? None of us are developers. Now that person leaves, we have no idea about where anything is, et cetera.
Mhm.
Whereas if we're engaging you guys, if unfortunately one of our resources leaves your firm, somebody can kind of pick up, where it was left off and get up to speed relatively quickly. Whereas if we hired somebody and they left, I'd have no idea what anything is in the background or any of that. I don't know code. So that's really
Mhm.
kind of like the intellectual capital that you guys have to make our lives easier.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also, Atlas is a pretty lean operation in terms of the 110 folks that you have. Most of them are recruiters at this point, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We lean and mean across everything operationally, from a recruiter standpoint, from a technology standpoint. It helps us, in a lot of ways, just be more agile in our decision making, and also it just helps us with our bottom line as well because we don't have a huge headcount to take care of these things. That allows for us to have just increased profits.
Mm-hmm. From a like a security perspective too, I know that, as technology continues to evolve, there are new risks to manage, and I think that that's something we can help with also is just being able to kind of assess some of that and help guide and make recommendations on some of those things. Have you found that's the case too?
Yeah, oftentimes I just come up with brainstorming ideas. It's like a component of just a sounding board for some ideas. Like, hey, this is an idea that in theory works in my head, but what are the practicalities to it that apply to our applications? Like, what is practical, what is not? And also, obviously from a security standpoint, it just, we're always looking at different things. I've heard of competitors that their software has been hijacked and their ransomware and all those things. So I'm constantly, thinking about those risks. And again, that's where the experience from the other folks at Atiba really is important to us because everybody's seen something different from one of their clients. So they're able to tackle things that I haven't even thought of, or have exposure to things that me in my recruiting world, my counterparts for the most part that I speak to in this world all have come from the recruiting world. So there's so many different ways of seeing things that it is very beneficial for sure.
Yeah. One of the things we've been talking with you all about is AI and how we could fold that into some of the various areas of Neo. And that's been just internally a fun topic for us to discuss because we're having that conversation with so many of our clients right now and how can we fold it in? And I know that we're hopeful there's a couple different projects, which we don't need to talk about the specifics of, but Lee, you want to talk about that just a little bit, how, sharing ideas between clients and kind of the brainstorming side of things, how that's been helpful on Alice in particular?
Yeah, I mean, at Atiba, we definitely see the relationship as a partnership. So, I mean, we realize like Pablo is a great recruiter and he has a lot of knowledge about IT, but he's definitely not the expert, nor does he want to be. So when we approach the situation, we really want to extend that knowledge. We want to set them up in the best possible situation. So like you mentioned, AI is an emerging technology. Everybody's super interested in it. And we want to come to the forefront as the experts to lend that partnership to Atlas. So when Pablo comes to us and says, "Hey, I know we don't want to be the first, but we don't want to be the last. What do you think that we should do in this AI space?" We want to be able to have the expert opinion on that. But there's also a level of trust that we need to have with each other. So, Pablo is very comfortable with the work that we performed in the past and other areas that we've executed on. So he really has that trust that the things that we're going to advise him on is not only the right thing, but we're coming from a situation where we want us both to succeed. So if we don't advise them in the correct way, they're not going to have success, and then we're not going to have success. And that's basically what it comes down to, is really trying to find that situation which we both have success and we're both able to, find wins in that space.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Pablo, one question, if you had any advice like for others who are looking to hire like a software, outsourcing their software development, is there, how would you identify the right kind of company? Because you've worked with other people than just us. This is, this is a current partnership, but I know there's a lot of different folks you work with. Are there specific characteristics you look for, or any advice you'd have on hiring a firm like this to do this like pretty meaningful part of your business?
Yeah, look, the first that Lee touched upon is just working with somebody you can trust, right? And trust that the advice I'm being given is what's best for us, not what's easiest or most profitable or fastest for the consulting firm. So it's like one, establishing that trust, and that comes with experience. That comes with you know people delivering on promises and on engagements and all those kinds of things. The other is to really understand what it is you ultimately want in a relationship. Like for me, it's very important that um, at the end of the day, I'm able to speak to somebody and I'm not just, if they have any issues or for whatever the case is, it's not, hey, go to our website, create a ticket, and somebody will get back to you in 48 hours. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, that's very important. I want to be able to talk to the people who are able to make decisions that will really impact what it is we're doing on our engagements. And certainly want to see accountability for, hey, these are measurables that we have, and are we meeting them, or are we not, and if we're not, why not, and all those kinds of things. So that's what I see. But I'd say for a lot of it is kind of sit down and really think about what it is you're trying to get out of the relationship. Obviously everybody has an idea of what the product is, but what's important to you? Is it staying within budget? Is it the product being as best as possible? Is it flexibility and being able to navigate through different things that pop up? Some people want a very rigid structure. Some people like a flexible structure. So again, I think managing your own expectations, understanding what it is that you want, goes a long way to finding a partner that works for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I will say too, if any of the participants have any questions, you can use the chat feature and we can address those questions as they come up too. Well, let's switch over to the managed IT services side of the house now. And before we get into that, Jeff, could you just sort of describe like what are some typical managed IT services? So we're all talking about the same thing here.
Sure. So, yeah, IT services could be, depending on what your background is, could mean different things, right?
Mhm.
For us, managed IT services is more about the hardware, the infrastructure, not necessarily the software development side, but most of the other pieces, right? So it's about antivirus, it's about making sure your networks are secure, it's about network performance and storage solutions, cloud solutions, running the servers, maintaining servers for your application. So Lee and the team on the software side would build the application, but those applications have to run on something, right? They have to be scalable. So the IT services would support those environments. And then it depends on the company and what level of need that they have. But IT managed services is basically more of a proactive approach. There's companies out there that do help desk, outsource help desk, call centers, things of that nature. That's really not what we're talking about with managed services. The manage is kind of the key word in that phrase. So for us, it's more about what are we proactively doing? We want to help you maintain your computer systems so that you don't have help desk tickets. We want to minimize those tickets, but we also give you a place to call, people to talk to, ways to send in emails, support, different ways. If you do need help, that we're there for you. But really, managed services is we're your outsourced IT department. If you were a company with a big IT department, you just expect IT to run, right? No one's there telling them what to do. You're just expecting that they're using latest technologies, they're using security protocols, that they're managing everything, and they're going to let you know if there's problems. So if we were managing a company, we would let them know we need to upgrade XYZ. Here's a rotation schedule on PCs. This is a better solution for you for antivirus, or this is a less costly option, right? We basically are charged for our services as mostly a flat fee depending on sizing. So we're not trying to make money on any software or trying to sell, option 1, 2, or 3. We're looking for the best solution for that customer, and what they're trying to do. But that's really the managed services part of IT.
Yeah. And does that fit your experience with what your vendor is providing to you all, Pablo?
Yeah, no, it's exactly right. There is some, hey, somebody calling my email's not working, etc. But a lot of it is really the anticipation. It's especially with technology moving so fast, different scams out there, etc. Just kind of staying on top of, whether it's fraud, virus, etc. Or Windows 10 was just sunset, so our IT service provider was able to identify which machines needed, were available to update, which machines needed to be replaced, come up with a schedule, give us the options of what to buy, all those kinds of things that I just didn't have to think about. They basically just presented me with my options, said yes, yes, no, and kind of moved on. So
Mm-hmm.
again, part of what's great about it is, if they're helping us solve proactive problems because they're seeing some of their other clients as well having some of these issues, and they're like, hey, well, if it happened to them, it's going to happen to Alice. Let me make you aware of some of the things that are coming down the pipeline. Might not affect you now, but it will affect you at some point.
Mm-hmm. And from what you've said about having kind of a startup mentality, that just definitely seems like an obvious choice to outsource that and not try to manage all of that internally and deal with the headache of all the change and all the variables that might be coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's a numbers game too. When we just moved offices, so if we had one person dedicated into into our company, now I'm going to have one person do 80 computer setups and all those kinds of things. Where our IT provider, hey, we're moving offices. Okay, they sent 8 guys to come and help for a few days on the weekend, and now that was taken care of. So I'm able to scale and tackle problems that might feel too big if we were kind of going at it alone.
Mm-hmm. And one thing Jeff has raised before is just that, sometimes we hear from clients that, concern over having an outside company having so much access. Jeff, I don't know if you want to speak to that, just how like that sometimes does come up in your all's conversations. Then I'd be curious, Pablo, how you all respond to that too.
Yeah. Well, it's a couple things. One, it's similar on the software side, right? You're giving company secrets. You're trying to develop things. It's really about trust and partnership. There certainly are NDAs and legal agreements that are in place to protect the client and Atiba or the managed services partner. But really, it's about the partnership and it's making sure that we're being smart with the assets we have. So we have a secure vault. So we store, information. We store passwords, things of that in an encrypted vault. Where if something were to happen to Pablo, or he got, in trouble or had to, was sick for a little while or something, and someone needed access to something,
Or
we
took
have
a vacation
backups.
and never came back,
Or
Some
actually took a
nice to
vacation and
imagine
didn't want to
that
have to be
deposits out.
bothered every 5 minutes. We can help with those kinds of things, and we can be a business continuity support. But whether you trust your internal IT department that you hired somebody, or you trust a company, it's you're trusting somebody, right? And that's what you need to do is make that assessment. And a company like Atiba, a managed services partner, is going to have a lot of policies in place. We have a lot of security protocols and platforms that we follow to do best practices. So yeah, that's usually how we kind of describe it. Is it's a partnership. You trust us, we trust you, but we also have legal support behind it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Pablo, how do you feel about that with your side?
And the way I see it is, we're in a lot of ways you're going to have more security than us, because you're going to be protecting multiple clients, as opposed to so your security has to be that much more stringent than ours, just because of the different layers, et cetera. And obviously from a reputational standpoint, it's a huge risk for anything to be, for any breach or any information to be shared, et cetera. So from that perspective, yeah, I'd always kind of assumed, we always ask the right questions, like, hey, what are you guys doing, et cetera, there. But we know that we're kind of aligned in, hey, the security protocols and what's important and all those kinds of things. And then, just in general, how you work with us also will tell us a lot of things. In theory, people will say, hey, yeah, we do everything the right way, we protect you, et cetera. But in practice, as we're dealing with different information and different things, whether it's setups, machines and all those kinds of things, I can tell how you're treating every situation will kind of inform me as to how you're actually doing things versus how you say you're going to do them as well.
Mm-hmm. One question we often get a lot on this topic is like billing arrangements and structures and how that can be structured. And maybe Jeff, I know you have a lot of thoughts on this. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? And I think that also leads into like the cost effectiveness of outsourcing in some ways.
Yeah. Atiba's been around about 30 years. Network services has grown in our, managed services IT over the years. Hasn't been around 30 years, but it's been around quite a while, and we've explored different ways to work, and we are somewhat flexible with our customers for a couple different approaches, and what works in their world or makes sense to them. But what we found by the vast majority and where we're really moving is more of a flat, I'll say a flat rate, but there's some options and things, right? So if you want really basic support, we have some options there, and it's a per seat type of a thing, so per person, right? Our goal is not to track how many help desk calls we take and track our hours, because our goal is honestly just to have as minimal hours as we can, because we're doing things right and you're not having problems trying to contact us. So, for us, it helps you. You want to get a flat rate. What we don't like to do is make customers feel like they're being nickels and dimed. And so every month the price goes up, it goes down. Oop, I had to make a call, so now I don't got to pay more. Or, let me just try to figure this out on my own, because if I figure it out on my own, I don't have to call somebody and now I have to pay for it. So we've really moved to more of that. Look, you're going to get the support you need, and we'll work with you on how big your company is, how many people probably would call in, the types of tickets. After a few months, we tend to adjust that if need be. We can work with you, go up or down. But really, we just have some standard rates, and we found that works the best if it's 5 people. So if it's 5 people or 20 people or 100 people, it just scales based on the number. And then there's licensing fees we pay for because we want to use our antivirus and our remote management tools and things of that nature so that it's a stable environment and a tried and true systems. So yeah, so that's really seemed to work really well. It's an easy conversation to have with customers. How many people do you have? How many servers do you have? Kind of get an inventory of things and then be able to give them a pretty flat rate and say, here it is. This is the price per month. And you don't have to worry about calling us. You can call us 100 times, you can call us twice. And we kind of expect there might be more calls at the beginning until we do more of our proactive work and then get it down to a really, smooth operation. But then, as Pablo said, there's situations where they're one-offs, right? We have to replace 80 computers, and so those types of things we take out of that. Unlimited, those might be project-based work, or depending on the client, the arrangement, if we're in more of a pro environment, it may just be covered because we just know every few years we're going to have to do this expense, and it's just, spread out over multiple years. And then we have some clients that require really high levels of security. And so there's extra firewall, there's extra work in protection and security tools and software that we would do, and duplicate backups and triplicate backups on multiple hosted platforms, multiple cloud environments. And so we have some higher level options as well for companies that do need those extra levels of security. So we have a couple different pricing models, but mostly we're getting to that point where it's a per person, per server cost. And then it's either your standard cost or a pro kind of security plus type cost.
And has that been your experience, Pablo, just with your current company? There's just different models you can opt into?
Yeah, absolutely. They're currently our contract is on a per headcount basis for, the typical support. Then they also manage our 365 contracts, our AWS servers and all those things and their standard costs. And, what I found to be, beneficial is just, proactive communication. Don't wait for, hey, AWS is charging more, and all of a sudden you have an invoice that's, significantly different than what you're used to getting. Communicate that ahead of time. Hey, this is coming down the pipeline. These are the options, what we can do. We can scale back, we can keep it the same, etc. So that, you understand, ultimately when you're outsourcing, you want somebody to treat the engagement, the relationship as if they were in-house. And when I have somebody that's working for me in-house, what for those who are senior level is like, hey, it's not about doing, it's about anticipating what's coming down the road so that there's no surprises. We try to avoid the surprises because that's where you can get yourself into trouble from a cost perspective or an operational perspective. And so, the communication is really, really vital for, especially when you're making decisions. When it's 6 of you, decision only affects 6 people. When you're making decisions that affect 110, if you make one mistake, it's 110 mistakes. So you have to make sure that you get it right.
Yeah. And speaking of the 10 years in that you are now, do you have any advice for someone who's maybe just starting their own business and how to start this process of, you get your core business function down, but then you need to look for all these other service providers who can help you with some of your tech needs and otherwise. What kind of advice would you have for someone just starting out?
Yeah, I would say rely on network to really vet. So there's a lot of vendors in all different areas in all different worlds, just like there are a lot of recruiters out there. And I would say rely on your network to really talk about, and in those conversations, hey, I'm looking to outsource my IT, et cetera. And you can, while people are sharing who they know or their experience, they're also going to be sharing their experience, and it can help you really identify the pitfalls of either one. Kind of if you can leverage off of people's experience and mistakes to kind of avoid them. Inevitably, there will be, like anything, there will be mistakes that happen and things that go wrong. But same thing if you hire somebody. You know what I mean? There's pitfalls to everything. But I'd say leverage off your network of the people out there that have gone and done it and see how they've done it, and then develop your own approach. Because sometimes what might work for somebody else might not work for you, but it's kind of good to talk to people about their experiences.
Definitely. And no decision is final also, you can
absolutely
switch it up as needed too.
One thing on the network IT or the managed services side, too, is just your location. Like, are you remote? Are you going to have a physical building? Do you want people on site? Because that is one other thing that we have run into with questions. We have some offices where they're like, they own 20 different buildings, like maybe say a dentist office. They own 20 offices or 50 offices across the United States. And so how do you physically support that, right? And that sort of thing, whether it's internal or outsourced. And with Atiba, we have a lot of the managed remote services where we can do just about everything other than plug cables in, remotely. And so we often will use local companies in different areas to come in to bring headcount in. For some of our larger clients, we can send a team. If there's a bigger project, we can send a team on site somewhere if it's not, where our team actually is located. But that's something that comes up now and then. And then we also kind of find that in some cases it's worth sharing a resource, so to speak. Not in a more of a hybrid approach, I guess it's a better way to say that. But we have the IT support, we manage everything, but they might want one or two internal employees, junior IT guys that are on site that are physically there to help, and they become kind of a partner with us. And they could, walk around and plug in monitors and plug in desktops and show people how to use something and, walk them through the process. I was with one company and they just, the CEO wanted one person on staff, that IT, that could figure out how to turn the conference room on, and set up all the stuff in the conference room. And then they would help us with reformatting computers or, be hands-on. But then we can also bring them into the fold and they can learn a lot, and they've got a lot of expertise to draw on, when there's heavier tasks that are needed.
Mm-hmm.
So are you guys remote and obviously you have office buildings as well, but kind of in that hybrid mode?
Yeah, it really depends on the role, division, etc. I'm fully remote, so I'm based out of Florida, and while our headquarters is in New York, but we have a satellite office in Cranford, New Jersey. As you mentioned, having that resource to go there physically and whether to setups, whether it's looking at the IT room and all those things is vital to us. It's not necessary every day, but it's vital to us. And the other thing to consider, other than locations, is hours of operations. We have some people that get in early. There's 7:30, et cetera. So they're going to need answers if there's an issue. They're going to need answers, as quickly as possible. And then we have some people that are getting late, but perhaps work later. They're working to 7:30 and they need answers if something goes wrong that might be fatalistic to what they're trying to achieve. So that's something else to consider when you're looking at kind of this kind of relationship as well. What are my hours of coverage?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, makes sense.
Especially multiple time zones too.
Yeah, agreed. We're not there yet, but yeah, I can only imagine having to deal with West Coast time zone.
Yeah. Well, that leads me into my last question, Pablo. What's next for Atlas?
What's planned is growth. I think we have 10 divisions now. All of those divisions, I think, can grow, and we hope to expand not only by adding other divisions, but adding other offices as well in different locations. So I think this next 6 months is going to tell a big part of how quickly we do that. But the idea is to grow. We want to grow aggressively. We kind of still have that startup mentality of, hey, everybody hands on deck. And we still have that mentality of let's try new things. If they work, great. If they don't work, let's move to the next one so we can continue to learn and just, grow operationally.
Excellent. Well, we're glad to be your partner with that along the way.
I appreciate everything you guys do.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us today, Pablo. We'll stay on for a few minutes afterwards if anyone has any questions that they want to drop in the chat. But Pablo, we really appreciate you joining us today. And Jeff and Lee, thanks for jumping on as well.
Thank you all so much.
All right. Thank you, guys.